Good evening, friends, and I'm back here at 5 p.m. With my dear friend Leena Asher for yet one more interesting, inspiring conversation on Moonshot Conversations. And what a superb conversation we had with Jacqueline Way last Sunday. And Leena, I love the idea of the share box. Actually, I also love the daily dose of happiness, with dose being an acronym for the fact that each time we give in some form, physically or emotionally, or contribute to the world in some way, we give ourselves happiness and healing by releasing a dose of D for dopamine, or O for oxytocin, S for serotonin, and E for endorphins. So the share box fits so well into this frame. You don't need the actual share box. Any cardboard container, friends, can be turned into a share box.
So, the share box idea will go such a long way in bringing relief and joy to those who actually need it. There's so much all of us, our corroboree, need to do together to bring a little bit of kindness to the cruel way the world has been set up for such
Yes.
disparity by all of us sharing resources. America's top 1% own 43% of the wealth. And that's just
Wow.
crazy. And India's richest 10% own over 80% of the wealth. And this trend is only going upward every year. And so the disparity is only getting wider and wider, and the divide is getting, deeper and deeper.
So, Lina, I know that leading economists and economic organizations believe that to maximize income and wealth for everyone, including those at the top, there have to be meaningful checks on income and wealth inequality.
Absolutely. So thought leaders around the world are actually thinking about this. I interviewed Daniel Markovits. He's a Yale professor and author of a book called The Meritocracy Trap. I've also interviewed David Perel and Seth Godin. Seth Godwin's a marketing guru and also author of a book called Don't Steal Dreams. All these thought leaders are very, very concerned about the lack of education opportunities for children from poor socioeconomic backgrounds. And this perpetuate what Daniel Markowitz says as the meritocracy trap. And he argues that this is bad for all children. The,
Yes.
the the ones from the upper end and the ones from the lower end of the socioeconomic divide, because what happens to the kids who are at the lower end of the socioeconomic divide? Obviously, they don't get a great education, but the ones who go to pricey schools, they also are under a lot of stress because of the pressure of academic inflation. So poor kids get a poor education, and rich kids or kids of the wealthy, they receive an education, but they actually lose out on learning, critical thinking, and creativity. And they gain just so much by the way of stress.
So, Lina, when I was doing some reading around, the personal benefits of giving and contributing, I
Yeah.
came across an article written by Henry Ford, who paid his workers really high wages. It obviously would have had all the neurochemical benefits for Henry Ford of giving generously, we have been talking about. So it also meant that they could buy 4 cars. So let's begin today's conversation. Why less is more?
So, Agnella Rajesh, is a seamless conversation to have after the one we've had on giving and contributing. We want to excite our entire corroboree about the care and share box and to minimize what we hoard. So, this is a great just understanding the neuroscience of why less is more and more is less. So, I went to Maldives last month, right? And
Yes.
that made me really happy. The planning of it, the journey, the being there, even more so because I haven't traveled outside of India for a very long time. But it got me thinking, would 10 trips more this month make me 10 times happier? And the answer is no, it just would not.
So I guess this is connected to what you mentioned in an earlier Moonshot conversation, the hedonistic treadmill. That after a while, we need more and more to feel the same level of pleasure, and eventually we go back to our base level of happiness we set.
So any of us who are trying to get happiness from the outside in will feel that we will go back to our base level of pleasure. And ironically, we miss increasing our base level of happiness in all the busyness we create to earn more and more. Agnel Rajesh, have you heard of the Fisherman Story by Paulo Coelho?
So, well, Lina, I did see its inclusion in the journal, and I will take a look at it after the show. Why don't you tell us a bit about it now?
Okay, so the longer version is in the journal, and so everyone has to
Okay.
go and watch the video. But this is the story basically. There's a businessman sitting on a Brazilian beach in a Brazilian village. He sees a fisherman, and the fisherman comes in with a few fish. And impressed, he asks, "How long did it take you to catch the fish?" And the fisherman says, "Only a short while." So the businessman asks, "Why don't you stay at sea longer and catch even more? Because this is enough to feed my family."
Yes.
So then what do you do for the rest of the day? So the fisherman says, "I play with my kids, I take an afternoon nap with my wife. In the evening, I'm with my friends, we play guitar, we sing, and we dance throughout the night." The businessman, being a PhD, and you know how these management consultants are, he says, and they have to offer advice, right? So he says, "I'm telling you, spend more time at sea, catch as many fish as possible, buy a bigger boat, then catch even more. Soon you'll be able to set up your own company, lots of boats, a production plant for canned food and distribution. Then you can go public, float your shares in the stock market, and then be rich." And so the fisherman says, "And then what will I do? After that, you can finally retire, go fishing to enjoy yourself, return home to play with your kids, take an afternoon nap with your wife, and join your buddies for a drink in the evening and play the guitar and sing and dance throughout the night."
So I've heard this story in multiple versions. I've heard it in the farmer's version also, but that indeed is a powerful story with a very strong message, Lina. We work hard on a treadmill to
Yeah.
enjoy a life that is possibly right under our noses. We are actually in a constant state of trying to capture experiences and objects.
Yes, and this, as you said, this is for experiences. We try to capture them, and this goes for objects as well. We have a limited capacity to process and enjoy, you know, anything, including new toys and gadgets. And yet, so many of us persist, you know, in a constant battle to have more, to do more, to hoard more, even when we actually know that this is not where happiness is. We often work really long hours for more money at the cost of a social life, peace of mind, you know, mental and spiritual health. So why don't we all work towards a little bit more balance, and stop being addicted to the treadmill of being so busy, you know, and start building internal states of calm.
Absolutely well said, Lina. Our corroboree is already joined us. There is Nitin Mono, there is Nanet Disa, there is Ravi Salunke, there is Paul Ritesh, there is Vandana Murjani, there is Divya Punjabi, and Divya has a question. So the law of marginal utility is in action when it stops giving us happiness, like you said for Maldives.
Absolutely. So you know, I haven't known it as the law of marginal utility, but I just say that, you know, it's the law of marginal returns, you know, that eventually you're not going to get the same kind of returns for the effort you put in.
So all the lovely people there who are watching this show, you can definitely join us by commenting in the comment box below, and you can also ask us questions and get involved with the conversation that I'm having with Lina. So Lina, I'm committed to finding more balance. I changed the way I work after reading Cal Newport's book on deep work. He talks about deep work as a superpower in our increasingly competitive 21st century economy. Before reading this book, I often got distracted by the busyness of emails and social media.
You know, your message on your WhatsApp setting announcement, your new mode of work. I check my messages at the change of every hour. Please expect responses accordingly. We will discuss deep work in another Moonshot conversation, when we discuss focus. But you know, I did an interview with Nir Ayel for Corroboree, and he terms his superpower, or the coming superpower, as being indistractable,
Interesting.
which is the title of his book. And we will talk about this a little bit more when, you know, when we explore focus.
So, Lena, discussing work, focus, and our brains, the saying could be if you don't use it, you lose it. And with things we hold in our environment, it could be if you don't use it, you still lose it.
No, if you don't use it, then you should lose it. So clutter is known to cause distraction. So, we should mindfully have possessions that bring value into our lives. There's a book by Mario Kondo, and it's an international bestseller, and it's titled The Life Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And it talks about belongings as beings, and we all know that everything has energy in it. And these beings, these objects help us live good, comfortable lives. But just like human beings, things don't like to be neglected and stored in deep, dark drawers and forgotten. And when you do that, they're kind of accumulating energy you don't want.
So if possessions don't serve you, they would be much happier serving someone else, right?
Absolutely. So, we become a humanity that self-medicates on things that numb us, like excessive things, excessive alcohol, excessive media, excessive entertainment, and shopping and hoarding. The marketing world adds to this addiction of shopping by telling us what we should look like, how we should behave, and how we should consume, and what we should consume.
And if we don't feel enough or feel inadequate in any way, then we succumb.
Absolutely. So, the truth is the pressure that we feel though is internal. It's the factors may be external. We may be influenced by external factors, but we actually don't have to take the marketing world's bait.
This time I think has been, I think has been a time of reflection for a lot of humanity. So many have realized that they have taken the bait and now want to declutter.
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful process. And while every time, as I said to you before, every time I do a Moonshot Conversation, it helps me as well. So I'm in the process of decluttering, and it's really beautiful. When you clear out physical stuff, you allow energy to flow more easily, and you feel a huge sense of relief. When I was working, I found myself buying hordes of clothes, and I kept buying them because I kind of felt like I always have to show up differently at the office. And this time has actually demonstrated how little we really need. So I'm collecting everything I've not worn since the lockdown, and I'm actually now putting them all into my share box.
Fantastic, fantastic. Shubhangi Tirodkar has a question. Rather a comment. Social media is affecting work and distracts us. How do we reduce it?
So one of the things we do is, social media and all of these things have been created to distract you. So the minute you have any, what do they call them, alerts, you're bound to get affected. So I'm not saying don't use social media at all, but time it. So say you're going to do 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening. If you do it in that sense, you'll feel connected. You won't really feel distracted, but just don't allow any pings and dings to kind of come at you.
So Divya has a suggestion with a question. Pandemic has made me realize that life is better when we are minimalistic, repeating our clothes for work from home, no parlors, no restaurants, and we have thrived. How do we ensure we continue with this lifestyle and not go back to the maximalistic life?
That's a beautiful term, maximalistic life. I love it. Absolutely love it. So we just have to be mindful. We have to remind ourselves of this time. And, we have to remind ourselves that, maybe this time has come as a gift to remind us that the way we're living is not sustainable.
Fantastic. So Girija Gopinath has a question. Is there a method to declutter? What about thoughts that we collect and don't serve our purpose?
So every time, Girija, I have a thought, and actually this happened to me yesterday. It happened about, a relationship I have, and our brains are monkey brains. They're programmed to be monkey minds. They're programmed to take us down. And, every time you have a thought that doesn't make you feel okay, just ask yourself, is this thought serving me, or is it, or is it, is it moving me forward? Is it making me feel stuck, or is it moving me behind? Anything that's moving you, makes you feel happy and is growing you, is a great thought to have. Anything else, you have to have like a little rubbish bin in your hand and go trash, trash, trash.
Fantastic, Lina. So it's not just physical stuff that people find a challenge to let go of. I guess we hold on to physical stuff and emotional stuff like resentment and anger as well.
Yes, as Girija said, and we have to get rid of these as well. So I spoke to Jill Murray, author of
Mhm.
Big Why Love, and the biggest takeaway from that conversation was about letting go. And this is something that a novelist, E.M. Forster, said, and he said we must be willing to let go of the life we have planned as to have the life that is waiting for us. So he's talking about surrendering, and here surrendering and letting go is the opposite of giving in or giving up. The difference is, when you give up, it is an action of defeat. But when you choose to surrender or to let go, these are actions of personal power.
Fantastic. So we could consciously think of what attitudes, feelings, and things we may need to let go, to unblock our paths.
Yes, so not only do we need to do this consciously for ourselves, but for the human race. For humanity to survive, we need to radically transform the way we lived. Just as Divya said, I mean, if we have to be mindful of this. Not only do we have to do this to be kinder to ourselves, but also to the planet. If we all make small changes, we could all contribute towards a bigger systemic shift. My brother is cycling to work. He's saying that's my contribution towards global warming. So if we all do these acts of kindness, as Jacqueline Way said, we all have our one give every day. We'll all kind of contribute to a much larger shift.
So seems logical to do something that makes us happier and perhaps slows down the destructive trajectory that we are on. So let's explore the idea of clearing of stuff around our houses to begin with.
So tremendous benefits, as I said, to clearing clutter. Anything you do not like, or you do not use, or you do not need should be removed from your space. Feng Shui philosophy says it. Vastu says it, that allowing a free flow of energy, and free flowing energy is what creates health, wealth, love, and overall abundance. So
Absolutely.
clutter actually stops that energy flow and creates stagnation and exhaustion.
Clearing our physical clutter will also allow energy to flow freely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Feng Shui, traditional Chinese medicine, and Vastu talk about the circulation of life force energy as a key to kind of having vibrant health and abundance. Acupuncture is used to remove blockages and imbalance from your body, and it creates more wellness. And clearing clutter does exactly the same in your physical space.
So, where are some of the areas where we should look through in our homes to begin the process? I think clothes and books are two areas we should begin with.
Yep, look in your kitchen for things you're not going to eat. Chocolates, jams, collect
Yeah.
and distribute them. And not just fancy clothes. For example, even wedding clothes. I gave away my wedding clothes to somebody who was getting married, but could not afford to buy wedding clothes because I knew I wasn't ever going to wear them again. And also blankets and pillows, and not and Divya and I have spoken about this very often with everybody else, that why do we not share things like our dupattas and jewelry, and why do and why do we not pass on gifts to someone who will value something that you've worn 50 times more than you will value it. Pass on makeup that you're not using, any decorative item in your home that does not bring you vast amounts of joy.
So, Girija has a question again. Why do we have this compulsive habit to hoard? Is there a psychology behind it?
Absolutely. There is a psychology behind it. You'll see that people who hoard usually have felt some form of lack growing up, and that's literally why we hoard. We feel we're not going to get what we need, we hoard. And yeah.
So, Divya has a question, interesting question. Do you suggest to let go of people also relationships? That's a question.
So Divya, if any relationship is not, I'm not saying we be self-centered around relationships, but every relationship has to have two people in a great value to each other's lives. So if any relationship is actually having you feel stuck, or is moving you behind, it is time to let go of that relationship. We're all scared to be alone, but um, we never know that we are not living the life we need to live because we're holding on to a relationship we shouldn't be holding on to.
Absolutely. So once we declutter the unwanted stuff around us, it will also save us decision fatigue. The less clothes you have, the easier it is to decide what to wear. So I guess also with less clutter, it would be easier to find things like your car keys, which we are almost searching for every day. Why do we hoard, Lena? I would like to repeat that question again.
Okay, so generally, as I said to Girija, some people who have grown up feeling scarcity will hoard. If you, and not just hoard I'm not just talking about hoarding physical possessions. It's shown that if you face hunger or food scarcity, you will hoard fat because your body will signal that there could be a starvation around the corner. If you've grown up feeling a lack of anything, you will hoard stuff. And we actually, in our own way, we teach children to hoard some, because when they do when they don't do what's expected of them, we punish them by taking stuff away. And then when they do what's expected of them, we give them stuff. In this way, we kind of create a subconscious belief in our children, a subconscious understanding that if you own stuff, you're good, and if you don't own stuff, you're bad. So hoarding is such a problem from a psychological point of view that there's even a term for it. It's called hoarding disorder. And we've become a humanity that has stuff and hoarding as central to our lives. The United States is the biggest hoarder of
Yes.
stuff. People in the US spend over 12 billion a year just on self-storage facilities. So it's not in their home, but they're storing it somewhere else. And that just means, everyone's renting more space to store more stuff. And clutter is just wrong for us, whether it's in our immediate environment or we've displaced it and put it somewhere else. Clutter is just wrong for us in all ways. Clutter, um, when we have clutter-free minds and spaces, we allow more creativity in our lives, better decision making, and more simplicity and more happiness.
So, Lena, how could parents make their children grow up understanding the benefits of buying less stuff so we don't create the clutter or hoarding disorder in the first place itself?
So there's an exercise in the journal, but some basic things that parents can do so that their children grow up more mindfully is to teach your children the difference between wants and needs. And as a parent, you are only there to provide their needs. Any of their wants has got to be earned by them. So the difference is we teach them that we need food to survive, but we want chocolate. We need shelter. We want a fancy home. And also we need to teach our kids to keep a free flow of energy cycles. So I do this when if I earlier, now I'm not even going to shop, but earlier when I bought two things, I'd give away two things. Right, that was just an exercise. And do that with your kids. When you buy two new storybooks for your kids, make sure that two older storybooks go into the share box. In this way, you'll pass on your values because children will watch you do this. Children will absorb the importance of stuff or not the importance of stuff by watching you as parents. Are you online shopping a lot? Do you hoard a lot? Do you give things away easily? Start today. Tell your kids, it's our mission to find two or three things or five things or 10 things every day to place in the share box. Something that will be far more useful to somebody else than it is sitting in our cupboards or on our shelf. As your children watch you do this, as they watch you create conscious and deliberate thoughts and actions, they will learn to do the same. And don't use giving of stuff and taking away of stuff as reward and punishment.
So, friends, if we all do this, we can turn back time and in the process rebuild feelings of community. We will be kinder to the planet and definitely to our own well being. I think we are all aware that the earth cannot continue to survive unless we all make deliberate, conscious choices. We need a way forward that is more wholesome. If we want less, we are likely to gain more of our time and what makes life worth living. I remember reading a quote that struck a deep chord in me, Lina. If you have succeeded in life when all you really want is only what you really need. And this was a very impactful quote that stuck in my mind permanently. If you have succeeded in life when all you really want is only what you really need.
Absolutely. What a wonderful quote. Agnella Rajesh, there's an inspirational book by Mike Berners-Lee called There Is No Planet B. So, in business, we all have a plan B, but there is no planet B. And so many other books like Do Good Lives Have to Cost the Earth? Agnella Rajesh, there's an absolute need for each one of us to
Yes.
choose to live more deliberately, more simply, and more intentionally for the survival of mankind and our planet. Each one of us and every corporation has to make this a lifestyle and a business choice. Mindfully look around and see the wastage we produce as a species. My dad and I, we went to Goa, and just the travel now, each of those PPE kits is just so much of wastage, and we're just constantly producing wastage as a species. We overpackage everything. Think of all the Amazon parcels reaching homes. Approximately 165 million, sorry, 165 billion packages are shipped in the US alone each year. So imagine what it is around the world. The cardboard used for that roughly equates 1 billion trees.
Wow, wow. We are actually drowning in a sea of packaging waste, and too much of it is ending up into the ocean. That's the only place it goes to.
Absolutely, Agnel Rajesh. The United Nations says that by the year 2050, there'll be more plastic waste in our oceans than fish. We have to become more mindful. We have to, as consumers, not only ask why, but demand answers to wasteful packaging.
Absolutely. In fact, Lina, I saw an interesting YouTube video in the journal about a man asking, why do we need a cardboard box to house the toothpaste that we buy? We are so caught up in fancy packaging and branding. In fact, Mahatma Gandhi so rightly said that the earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed. I also thought deeply about the Colgate Palmolive celebrated study, where they are being appreciated, in fact, of increasing its sales and revenue by just increasing the opening of the mouth of the tube, as well as the fact that technology products are deliberately designed to fail prematurely and get out of date. Now, these kind of strategies in marketing actually are creating more opportunities to create more waste in the ecosystem and the environment.
So I wrote there's an article included in the journal that I wrote after a complaint I sent to Indigo.
Mhm.
I was on a flight, and I wrote this article afterwards, and I've received no response. Obviously, I asked for cookies, and this is what I had to get through to get to the cookies. First, you open a plastic wrap, unwrap that, and you get to a aluminium tin. You open the aluminium tin, and inside that there's an aluminium seal foil.
Yeah.
Tear that open, and then you get a plastic tray that has the 4 or 5 cookies, I don't remember how many, sitting in the plastic grooves on the plastic tray. Now, I'm saying to Akarobri, let's start a movement. Let's everybody write to Indigo Airlines and to every airlines and demand that they stop this wasteful packaging. You know, uh, Imagine each one of us that inhabits this planet and the amount of trash we create from the time we wake up in the morning to the time we sleep. The Palmolive Colgate story you spoke about, everything's increased sales and revenue, be the highest selling, be the biggest brand, and nobody cares about what's happening to our world and our environment. This is what happens in a world when we teach children to always compete. We're always teaching our kids to compete constantly for sports, for academics, and these are then the children who grow into adults running organizations, competing in the marketplace for a higher share of the revenue, higher eyeballs, higher everything.
Yes, in fact, for increasing sales, tech companies develop technology that become obsolete. So we have to keep up a cycle of buying and disposing. In fact, Lina, we all know that disposing all forms very harmful landfills that ultimately secrete dangerous and hazardous chemicals, which is definitely impacting mankind negatively.
Absolutely, and this obsolete technology that we then put into landfills, it
Yes.
pollutes the air our children breathe. It contaminates the soil that we grow crops in to feed our very own children. It leaches into the water bodies from where we take the water for our children to drink. In the articles written by me, it's included in the journal. Every culture on the planet works with nature, and produces more resources than it consumes for the next generation. Every worm, every insect,
Yes.
every animal works for the ecological well being of our planet, every one except man. We consume lots of natural resources, and we do very little to add to the well-being of the planet. There's such a profound and true quote by Jonas Salk that says, if all insects disappeared within 50 years, all life on earth would end. If all human beings disappeared from the earth, within 50 years, all forms of life would flourish.
That's absolutely a hard hitting one, Lena. Friends, as you know, what I find interesting is that all the concepts we discuss, even when it is about giving to others, it is essentially about increasing one's happiness of the self. So while giving is great for the one that receives, it is beneficial to the giver as well. So while living a minimalistic lifestyle is good for the planet, it is also good for the individual who does it.
Yeah, everyone who chooses to abandon the culturally taught success story that material possessions are linked to success and happiness, and the more of us that embrace a simpler, more intentional life, that we choose to strip away the unnecessary things in life and focus on what's really important to us, the more we'll find happiness and creativity. We need to let go of hoarding stuff. This includes physical stuff in our environment, applications on our phone. Somebody said, remove the applications from your phone. Even things we hold on to for emotional reasons. Our memories are inside us, they're within us, they're not in our possessions. Holding on to things weighs us down mentally and emotionally. Letting go is incredibly freeing. After my reading of this process, as I said to you, I began practicing it. You can't see my room, but I'm actually letting go of a lot of stuff in my room. And in the beginning, it's hard to let go of stuff. But as you do it, it gets easier and you feel happier and more peaceful.
So, Lina, I remember you speaking about the paradox of choice. We are simply bombarded with infinite choices in what has become a consuming culture. In fact, it overloads our brains, actually makes us less happier, and overwhelms the planet.
Yep. So we should all pause more, and ask reflective questions before we buy anything. So the most important question we can ask is, do I really need this anyway? So, before we go to the cash register or an online checkout. And, I've started this as a deliberate practice. I'd go online, but I'll keep something in my cart for 24 hours, and 99 out of 100 times I've gone back and said, no, I don't need this. So it's a deliberate practice, and anything. I love mojris, but once upon a time I'd buy a mojris if I went to Jodhpur and Jaipur. Now I can have Jodhpur and Jaipur on my screen, and I can buy as many pairs of mojris as I want. Additional pairs of mojris are not going to bring me additional happiness. And the fact is, actually, every time I go back and I delete my cart, you feel happier, because the fact is that the human brain feels happier when it saves rather than when it spends. So every time you're about to buy, do what I do: save your cart for 24 hours and then revisit it and say, do I really need this?
So, friends, we are going to pause and reflect before we buy and consume, and we are going to clear out anything that we are not actively wearing, reading, or using.
Absolutely. And as I said, not just physical clutter, but also apps on our phones, and then anything we're not using. So anything that's not serving us, we want to learn to let go of pain, anger, guilt, emotional baggage, anything we're carting around with us. This is all inner clutter. So just like when you clear your physical space, you look at an object and ask, is this adding value in my life or not? Is it bringing me joy or not? The same thing we're going to do with our emotional baggage. Let go of thoughts that are not serving you, emotional memories that are keeping you stuck. Let it go.
Fantastic, Lina. So, where to next, Lina, for the next Sunday?
So we have a guest again next Sunday who will explore the power of letting go. Jill Murray, author of Big Wild Love, The Unstoppable Power of Letting Go.
Fabulous. So, this week we will practice clearing out our physical stuff, and next week we will explore how letting go of emotional stuff and dead relationships may serve us. That's what we are going to discuss.
Yes, Sagnala Rajesh, Jill will join us to explore together the discovery we can make that the secret of letting go not only holds the key for ending what is unwanted, the secret of letting go is the secret of making space for allowing the new.
Fantastic. So, friends, do join us next Sunday with Jill Murray. She's a TEDx speaker and author as we explore the power of letting go. And before we conclude, Lina, we already run out of time, which happens every Sunday with us because of the kind of response we get from the audience. I would like to thank all the people who are present with us: Divya, Girija, Namrata Thakkar, Paul Ritesh, Sandesh Raul, so many of us, Vandana Murjani, Shubhangi Tirodkar, all of you all, thank you so much for all your comments and questions. And we will connect again next Sunday on Moonshots at 5 p.m. India time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. See you next Sunday.